Sushobhan Mukherjee is the co-founder and CEO of Prime InfoServe LLP based out of Kolkata. It's one of the leading system integrators and what you would call IT space consulting ecosystems in India and working with Indian and global brands. He has over 18 years experience in the domain, holds key position in premier trade bodies like NASSCOM and TIE. Before starting his venture in 2010, he has worked with premium IT, telecom and system integrators like SIFI, VSNL among others. Next we have Pallab Ganguly. Pallab Ganguly is the CISO of CESC Generations. CESC is a power supplier for Kolkata. Pallab is an expert in telecom, computer networks, information security, cyber forensics, IT, OT security audit for more than 20 years. He is a researcher on smart grid security issues also. He has worked with CESC for the last 18 years and has been instrumental in the ISO 27001 certification for CESC's corporate data center. He is also a senior member of IEEE and chairman of IEEE ComSoc Kolkata section. Next we have Vikas Goel. Vikas Goel is a founder and director of ThinkStreet Technologies and is passionate about working with startups and helping them to scale. He has over 18 years experience in various roles and capacities in sales, marketing, consulting and program management. He brings strong industry expertise across sectors like advertising, technology, manufacturing. He has worked in senior management roles with global corporations including McCann Erickson, iGate, EMC and British Telecom. Next we have Venkatraman. Venkatraman is the CIO of MTR Foods. MTR Foods, you know, is the leading food consumer goods FMCG company in the country, and many of us would be using one or more products from MTR Foods. He has around 20 years of experience in IT, in leading business organizations, especially those in consumer goods or in FMCG. Last, we have Anuj Chopra, who is Director Technical Operations with OneShield. OneShield is a company in the insurance domain. He has over 19 years experience in infrastructure management and working with OneShield since 2008. He has shown success in areas like IT design, client and stakeholder management, project planning and project and SLA management among others. My first question will start today with Venkat. What do you feel in an organization, and you have worked with FMCG organization, and I'm talking not just the FMCG, especially in a pandemic situation like the COVID-19 has done today. Then what are the key strategies which are involved in formulating that business continuity plan? Venkat.
We landed up in situation, and for any organization, I think this would have come up as a surprise. It was at a short notice that we had to respond to this pandemic situation. First and foremost, when we were hit with this, immediate response was to ensure business continuity, as you said. And to ensure that, what we did is that we constituted a COVID-19 team, which was a cross-functional team. We went ahead in terms of ensuring the continuity from the resources perspective. When we say resources, for any organization, you have people as the key resources there. How would you manage the resources is one key thing. What is the succession plan? What is the failover? God forbid if one of the prime resources gets infected or for some reason is not able to make himself present. So what is the failover? So immediately at a short notice, you have a succession plan. You have measures so that the key resources are protected against this. So what are the prima facie, what are the measures you take to protect your resources? Second is, what if the one of those key resources are not able to attend the office for some reasons, and how would you ensure continuity from the resource perspective? Then the next one is from the material resources perspective. That is not the people, but you have the systems in place. So how would you ensure that? And how would you ensure that the existing applications which are there and which are if suppose a stoppage of those applications happens, it could be a showstopper for the business. So how would you ensure that? For that, again, we had to take some measures like any other organization. Then again, you have to also include in the fold your business partners. The business partners in our case could be the distributors of ours, the CFAs. So those are the extended arms of the business and all. So how would you ensure that? How would you ensure that the distribution continues? Because obviously we came under the essential services, so we were asked to continue the business. At the same time, we were also advised that with a lean manpower, you have to ensure that the productivity is same. So production cannot get adversely affected, but the resources have to be almost 50% or so. So we started continuing with 40% of the resources, and the productivity was maintained at the same level, or rather the demand has increased multifold, so we had to cater to that. I mean, this happens in this scenario, this would have happened with most of the organizations. So you need to have a task force for this, and we approached with that mindset. And this task force was entrusted with the responsibility of periodically reviewing as the situation developed, because things are uncertain and we don't know what is stored in the future. So obviously we thought that let's have a task force. This task force will be meeting fortnightly or weekly depending on the gravity of the situation, and we will assess the situation, then we will respond accordingly, and we will ensure that the manpower and the resources they are used to optimum. So this was the immediate response and all. And thankfully we have been working well. I mean, and this could apply for any other organization. I mean, it was for us, and when I checked with other CIOs and other industry verticals also, there is some kind of a planned approach. Initially it started with a jerk, but then there was a standard approach to that, having a cross-functional team or a team which monitors this, and how would you ensure that continuity of the. So what we did is that we started shift system in our manufacturing locations and all. The existing manpower was broken into some three parts, the manufacturing guys, and then they were asked to come in shifts, and then you have all sanitization, everything is taken care of. So you have to be in the forefront of ensuring that your workers, your staff is sanitized properly, the premises are sanitized properly, your partners are advised about it, even the families also, through webinars, through repeat sessions and all. We have been advising them that how should they maintain proper hygiene at the residence, because obviously that's the extended part of the employee, the families are. So we had to ensure that also. And thankfully, tools like Teams and all, they came handy. Microsoft tools, and also we are all connected, and the business is going on very well. There are multiple other tools which we use for the sales guys and all, but of course that's an extended discussion. But this was an approach, and it's working well. I mean, we are quite efficiently working it out.
So basically, what you are talking about is having a monitoring mechanism and ensure resource continuity, both in terms of human resource as well as material resource. Fine. We'll come to Sushobhan now. Now we have talked about BCP. Now, what in today's scenario are the needs for an organization to properly audit a BCP, and how should they go about this auditing? Sushobhan.
I'll take the cue from Venkat, as he has said. This is the kind of global pandemic all of us are experiencing maybe first time in our life. So it is kind of a business continuity kind of a drill which nature has forced us to conduct to understand the resiliency kind of disaster recovery plannings we have. So now, if an organization who wish to have a planned approach and have a business continuity kind of audit and prepare themselves, what are the kind of possible methodology, what are the ways and what are the standards we can follow. So in line with BCP, there is a international standard called ISO 22301. There are many organizations, they are following this standard. So this standard is nothing new. Any of the standard, any ISO standard we follow a principle called PDCA cycle, which is plan, do, check, act. Similarly, under this standard also, the standard is saying, and this is nothing specific about it, is saying, first we need to identify the business driver, means which are the possible critical business functions which will be impactful if there is a disaster. So first we need to identify those possible critical business functions. Once we can do that, then we need to draft a plan. We need to document that plan. We need to communicate that plan inside the team members, inside the stakeholders. We need to formulate different possible stakeholders. Once we do that business impact analysis in technical terms, we talk about BIA. So if we are able to communicate inside to the different stakeholders, then we should test our plan. Then we should, whatever gaps has been identified based on that plan in our existing setup, we should try to improve that. We should carry out the remedial actions, then align our organizational business objectives with these possible improvements. And on top of that, we need to have a incident response, incident communication kind of plan, so that we can align our businesses with those recovery point, RPO, RTO kind of terminologies we talk about. So this is the typically kind of audit framework if we follow. If we follow this PDCA kind of principle and prepare ourselves with the mock drills and regular audits and internal and external audits, definitely we'll be able to frame up a kind of situation where we can possibly have proper disaster recovery in this kind of disruptive pandemic kind of situations.
Thank you. I'll come to Pallab now. Pallab, since you have the expertise on both security and BCP, my first question to you is what sort of cybersecurity framework is required which can help in business continuity planning?
Since we are a power utility, I'm wearing both the hats of IEEE as an IEEE expert as well as from Calcutta Electric Supply. So what I think is that a cybersecurity framework can be of two types. One is an open system one and one is a buy-in one. So, but basically, as far as technology is concerned, a cybersecurity framework has three entities. First, the work from home scenario, the endpoints, which should have proper OS, including maybe it's a Windows OS or a Linux or a Unix flavor, but they should be proper patched and they should have a proper build. Apart from that, they should have a very strong antivirus, not those free ones. They should buy that from the cloud, or they should have proper subscriptions, and they should have the proper signatures updated. And I also think that the real-time protection is never on in an antivirus configuration if you go through an antivirus configuration review. That is very much needed. This is the first entity. The second entity is the transmission media, people are using, they may use IPsec, they may use SSL, they may use the VPN infrastructure, that is the VPN tunneling. So in the media, there should be proper integrity through a secure hash algorithm, that is a data integrity check. Proper confidentiality, including the advanced encryption standards or digital encryption standards. They should have proper authenticity through any LDAP, any directory server, or your firewall. Last but not the least, the most important one is your perimeter devices in your infrastructure network. Your perimeter devices includes the ISP routers, the load balancers, if you have dual point firewalls or single point firewalls, the three-tier firewalls that is covering your inside zone, external zone, and the DMZ, all should have proper access control list configured, and also all the devices should be proper patched, they should have proper firmware, they should have proper operating systems, and as Sushovan correctly said, this type of audits, the internal and the external audits from a statutory certain empaneled auditor is a compulsion nowadays. And since we are a power utility, it has been mandated by the Ministry of Power to go for the CII, CCMP, and also the IT/OT security audit. We are always following this type of process to maintain a sustainable, healthy, safe, and protected cybersecurity framework.
Next, I'll come to Anuj. My question is, how should an organization assign these BCP roles and responsibility so that the security vulnerabilities are minimized, especially in a current situation we are talking about? How should they assign these roles and responsibilities? Anuj.
I come from an infrastructure background, and I work in my whole experience has been with an IT company. So for us, in generic, the thing is that BCP and is not a single term, right? So business continuity planning takes side by side in arms with a disaster recovery as well, right? Because business continuity will only happen when a disaster occurs, right? So we need to make sure that it is not a one-man job. So my criteria of it, so someone has to tell that a business continuity has been invoked, right? So my point of business continuity planning starts from a person who should be able to handle and understand when to call that a disaster has occurred and we are now invoking our business continuity plan. From a broader policy perspective, I see the roles and responsibilities to be primarily of, 5 types, you can say. One is the defenders. The second one would be the engineers, then will be the auditors, and then will be the writers. So, defenders are the, people who say respond to incidents or requests of the customers. Right, so they will look at network captures and database code, etc., and they should be able to wait for a person to exploit. Should be patient enough to find an exploit where that intrusion might occur. Right, so after that we have engineers. These are the engineers who actually work and provide the access control lists to, say, routers, switches. They design and network our control items like load balancing, where the DNS will go, and things like that. Then there will be the auditors. So auditors is one of the most important role that is required in BCP today, right? So auditors can be further we can say can be defined into 4 types, which are people who will be scanning, who will be running a compliance, they will be doing risk assessment, and then they will be doing the validation that yes, this BCP plan actually works. After that, there comes the writers. So writers should be the organizational policy writers, say from an HR perspective, an HR manager; from a sales perspective, the person who will tell their clients, our clients, or his own clients, that we have invoked that DR, and what are the set of rules and regulations, like work from home is there. So all those kind of organizational policies which are written are the job of then writers. So after the writers also, there are 3 items that writers, they will produce the policy, they will ensure that it is regulated and it is under and following all the security program that is run by the security department of the organization.
Coming to Vikas, now the question is, now we have a security architecture in an organization, and how important is to align that security architecture of the organization with the BCP plan, and how should this alignment be done? Vikas.
I think this question has to be looked at in a different way. Just now, Anuj mentioned about the origin of BCP, that and he used about disaster planning and a disaster as an incident. Let's go back to the 90s when this BCP concept, business continuity as a concept, was still emerging, and the disaster word itself was coined when there would be a server crash or where there would be some kind of an outage, and that used to be called as a disaster, and there used to be a mirror site, and so a network can be switched to another network. So disaster recovery, and in parallel we have emergence of enterprise level risk management, operations risk. So there are 2 or 3 such disciplines which now converge together whether it is operations risk, whether it is enterprise level risk, whether it is information related risk, IT or infrastructure level risk. So all these risks have to be converging into what is integral part of any enterprise to be productive and answerable to the shareholders. I think that's what we call business continuity planning, or call it by any other word, disaster management. So I do not see that information security architecture can be very different or not aligned to any kind of business continuity planning. Earlier, if you talk about information security architecture in particular, we used to have these various, the ordinary threats were identified, for example, any kind of intrusion into the network. So we used to have intrusion detection systems, IDS, which were very popular. Some kind of firewall on the perimeter was put up. So we have come a long way. 2 decades from the 90s now, when IDS just came in and firewall was just happening. So today we are talking of, we don't have to wait for intrusion detection. And companies would used to, put up one security product and say, okay, I have put some security, I put some firewall, I'm secure. No, that is not the end of it. We need to understand that a breach can happen, and the people out there are much more innovative, whether they come from Russia, China, wherever. They are much more innovative, they are much more technical savvy than the ordinary products that we can install. And our OEMs are actually learning from such of these people who are intruding into the systems. So today we have reconciled to the fact that a breach will happen. And what Anuj just pointed out, we need to also have someone in the business team who will identify a breach has happened and invoke the business continuity plan. And our architecture should be ready to not just look at perimeter security, but also start looking at how secure are we once the breach has happened and the virus is already inside your systems and network. So I think our architecture has to be much more versatile, flexible, adaptable, and we need to do regular audits month on month. We should not, do ad hoc once in a year when our consultants or whenever auditors will come, and on that a month before we start auditing. So we should have this as a live, ongoing thing. Continuously look out for new security products, because the requirements for security are ever evolving. What was possibly secure a month or a 2-year back scenario is no longer secure today because new threats have emerged. So that is what we have to keep in mind, and that is what I would advise.
The user awareness aspect also comes here because of the emerging threats, and since the conventional firewalls and all cannot address the threats which are coming up now. So it makes sense that the user awareness sessions and making the user aware of the threat which is all prevalent these days, and making him kind of more responsible in usage of IT assets for that matter, and he's making him partner in this security journey and all makes more sense also. So that aspect also we have been experiencing.
Vikas has spoke about the BCP concept being introduced into early 90s and things like that. So how the things have evolved is that people, most of the people have not even heard about have to invoke a BCP plan. I think the last that the first or second that I heard was when there was serious flooding in Chennai, when people there had to invoke a real BCP plan. So now it makes more sense that like a natural disaster like this that has occurred, our BCP invoke and the disaster recovery invocation should be done, should be less dependent on people. So the lesser the people that who are who can make that decision or invoke a disaster recovery site as his as of a mirror site or things like that, where your data is continuously being replicated. So at least we should try to make our process like that there is only a single person or there are a team of people who can do that, but there is no dependency on set of people that are needed to invoke a DR. Because when a natural disaster like this happen, like people might be at their homes where they are stuck, there is no internet connectivity at a network guy's team, whereas the system guy is available for bringing the infrastructure up, but the network guy cannot make a connection. So automation also comes into place, where we say, okay, to invoke a DR we should have a person who is capable of invoking that DR and loop in people when and wherever it is necessary to do so.
Correctly said, Anuj. I just like to add something. What Anuj said, that since he has spoken of the term automation, definitely artificial intelligence and machine learning comes into picture. Because when you are not depending on people, you have to depend on automation. Another thing which is very much pertinent as far as this BCP is concerned is to have a proper DR in place. Because maximum places you have islanded DRs, and that is not the perfect scenario. To have a perfect scenario, you should have your near DR or a near DC, a complete replication mode with lot of automations.
Just to add to what you are saying, right? In a traditional word, like in a pre-COVID situation, right? When we talk about DR, as Pallab said, right? DR is more often than not, we companies try to do it as once in 2 years or once in a year, and
Exactly.
that is intended to fail at that point of time.
Yeah.
Right. So today's people, we have clients in US and Europe, and what people are now moving into, or where technology is moving into, with all the tools and integration tools and SIs in picture, that they say, okay, 6 months we run on a primary side, 6 months I'll run on my DR side. That is the only way to make sure that your DR site actually works. Otherwise, if you're going to do a 6 month or a 1 year plan, it will never work. You will land in one or sort of another trouble.
Right.
And as someone pointed out for the patching, this will make sure that your systems team or your network team is on their toes to patch both the sites in parallel.
Interesting business practice which has come out. I'll put a different spin or challenge on the situation. Come to Venkat for that. You initially mentioned things like creating that monitoring task force to maintain. Now, all these requires, this entire BCP planning requires a specific budgetary investment from the organization, and security overall on that BCP would require further investment. Now, in the current sort of scenario, where the business of the organization itself is challenged, how would the organization manage that budgetary investment? And more important, as a CIO, how could you help in minimizing that investment for the organization?
Interesting question, and this is a different angle to it. But then again, when you get into the BCP mode, we realized that the conventional projects, the usual projects which are there, and the initiatives which are there when the business is running, those take a back seat. Then you again get into a mode where you check and where you prioritize the initiatives. You start thinking about what are your priorities in this scenario. While the situation is normal, the priorities could be different. But now the priorities is, supposing from the IT perspective, if I have to take, the priority is keeping the lights on. The applications which matter most for the business, they have to run. Similarly, from the business perspective and all, how can I enable collaboration between the teams? How can I ensure that my sales field force and all, they can reach out to the stockists, they can reach out to the consumers, they can reach out to the retailers using technology. Now, we have used multiple modes of reaching out to the retailers and all. Believe me, our sales force could not, in the initial 1 month or 1.5 months, they could not move out of their homes because of the situation which was there in hand. So we thought that why can't we use some tools which would come handy in this case, so that they can reach out to the stockists, they can reach out to the retailers and all. and using these tools, which were cost effective. I mean, I'll just give an example. We wrote on WhatsApp, and we created a small link, web link onto it, wherein my organization could communicate with the stockist, and the stockist in turn could communicate to the retailers. The retailers would send their requirements to the stockist, and the stockist would fulfill. They'll get an acknowledgement to that and all. So everything was seamlessly, and this was done within a week. We had to get this thing in place, and this was done pretty fast. And we immediately tied up with the providers who could deliver goods and all. I mean, even to that extent that we used providers like Dunzo and all. So they started delivering. There were non-conventional delivery methods also which we had used and all. And thanks to the local administration, they understood that these are all essential services. So they did cooperate and all. So this is on the sales on the field front and all. How could I enable the sales guys? Similarly, in the manufacturing part also. The manufacturing part, our concern was, our priority was something the investment should go in ensuring that the worker sanitization is important. Keeping them safe is important. So we invested more on transportation and our own, like in case of IT, there were some key projects, manufacturing digitization was going on and all. I kept them in the back foot. I said, this investment, maybe I can defer it a later because this is not a priority at this point of time and all. And maybe I can bring in automation to some extent. So we used robotics, as one of our colleague speakers were talking about. We started the robotic part and all, and ABB came in handy for that. So we started that, and this was already on the anvil. So obviously it did not take much time for us to activate that. So that was on the manufacturing side. Similarly, when it came to our meetings, the routine corporate meetings and all which are held and all, we could activate Teams to a greater extent. Again, our tie-up with Microsoft helped, and they came in handy. I would thank most of the IT organizations. They partnered very well. Like to name Microsoft, to name Cloud4C or Control-S, which we call NetMagic. These all guys, they came forward and they extended. Like in case of Microsoft, we were having around 300 odd licenses on Teams for collaborative purposes and all. They extended it to some 500 or 600 because they also understood the situation is such, and they have to go all out in extending whatever is possible and all. So that connect with Microsoft and that partnership with these vendors and all helped us a lot. Wipro went all over, and then again they also helped us. And while they were also having the lean team in their office and all. So what we did is that from the budgeting perspective, it was not a major challenge because you reprioritize things and all. In the normal situation and all, the priorities are different. But BCP, when it is activated and when you are in the DR mode, then obviously the priorities change completely. And then the investments or the budgets which were there for the normal usual projects and all, they are again allocated to ones which are a priority at this point of time. And obviously there were handy tools which are there. I mean, technology, they have multiple options these days. As I said, one of those is WhatsApp and all, which we used. It's a pretty simple one. A homegrown web link we wrote onto the WhatsApp mode and all. There's very cost-effective solutions and all. Similarly, workflows we enabled. The document movement or a physical movement of the documents, we did away with that. There is a very good solution. Again, mostly cloud-enabled solutions. They are cost-effective, and the time to realize is pretty fast. These cloud applications done. So we leverage those things and all, and that's how we managed at this point of time. It's going pretty well.
Next, I'll come to Sushobhan. Sushobhan, BCP we know very classically has different sub-plans like protect, recover, sustain, and they involve within sustain hot sites and cold sites. Now, how would you ensure from an organization perspective the security at all these different kind of plan levels within a BCP?
Our discussion of this point context is ready. Like we are already discussing, like hackers are always much more efficient, much more smart. So they are working with tomorrow's knowledge. We are still stuck up in today's knowledge. Because the kind of situation we are into, it is a kind of zero trust architecture. Zero trust architecture, zero trust framework is a buzzword for last 2 years. But this COVID situation, they have shown us almost many of the organizations having almost no plan. Because the moment we have landed into work from home situations, We are landed into bring your own device kind of situations. So users, let me give you a simple example. Users are using Office 365 mail or maybe Google kind of mail. Moment he is using from your home or laptop or desktop, he is able to use his office corporate mail as well as his personal mail also. So if we talk about ransomware kind of framework, even during COVID situations also, we have faced many attacks with Maze ransomware and some other things. So still we are thinking in business continuity perspective of having some specific tools only will give me the flair. Suppose people are still saying I am having certain antivirus in my machine, I am having certain next-gen firewall in my gateway, so I am completely secure. So the point I am trying to harp on, let it be ransomware, let it be zero trust kind of framework, cybersecurity is kind of a journey. So it has to be treated as a holistic framework where people, process, tool, it has to be integrated. Like if we specifically talk about ransomware, it can come from 2-3 different points. It can come from the endpoint, it can drop in from the mail, it can drop in from the web also. So if some organization is having an endpoint, they have a gateway, next generation security, they have sandboxing, they have a mail security, then they have a web application security and web application firewall kind of setup, then holistically his ransomware fabric can be protected. So the point I am trying to say is, our thought process so far in many organizations and across the industry, it is in isolated. Why I talked about zero trust kind of a framework? Zero trust says, earlier days are gone. When I have a perimeter firewall, all the devices besides my firewall is protected. Now users are coming from anywhere. It can come from his home, it can come from cloud. Your applications are also not sitting in your on-premise data center. Sometimes it is on-premise, sometimes it is cloud. So users are coming all across. So unless you have a holistic framework in cybersecurity in hand, you will be not able to recover and protect in this kind of pandemic kind of situation. So now I'll come to the specific pointers. Earlier in my earlier talk, I talked about specific of BCP standard. There are certain other standards also available in the market. So everyone knows ISO 27000. There are HIPAA, there are PCI DSS, there are SOC 2. All standards are always talking about this business continuity. But we have not taken it seriously because earlier, I think Vikas already said, we have the DR, we have a methodology or maybe RPO and RTO, but last 2 years I have not even tested. I have not even tried. If once in a maybe 6 months, I'll just rotate. My DR site will become my live site and the present DC that will become the DR. So that way we don't have a proper mock-up kind of a drill, proper kind of a arrangement and internal understanding and framework, so that we can have once we have this kind of situation, even we will see we don't have a patch management policy. Like Pallav was saying, even 27,000 framework, it talks about everything, patch management, your backup, all procedures, everything. Like once we are having a ransomware kind of situation, you are finding you have all different things, you don't have a sandboxing. Because you can land up anytime in a zero-day kind of framework, hackers will not come, ransomwares will not come, nothing, it's not like that. Presently, last 2 weeks I am working with an organization, they have all possible measures. What they have done, they have introduced a RDP kind of server, publicly netted, and somebody is logged in from there, they are having VPN connections, but one specific RDP port, they have opened it. So they are attacked by a Probus ransomware, which is coming from Office 365, very simple. So we have not even thought of how even my Office 365, my public applications, once I am coming from zero trust kind of framework, we are not thinking of containerization also. Like now people have started thinking how we can deploy MDM kind of situation, how we can have a multi-factor kind of authentication framework where only Office 365 or maybe Google or whatever mail security is not enough. We need to have on top of that, there has to be a multi-factor kind of a single sign-on kind of situation. So the point we are trying to discuss, how we can protect, how we can recover, how we can have, when there are disasters, how we can sustain our business. So the point I am trying to make is, we need to think cybersecurity as a journey. We need to think the entire framework holistically, so that all possible standard, everything is there. It's not that we have to do something else. It's not that we have to immediately go for 22001 kind of standard certification. Somebody has something as per their business need. Somebody has a HIPAA, somebody has ISO. All are talking about this business continuity best practices. If you can adopt that and you can see it as a kind of a journey, then only your life will become much more easier, seamless.
I'll come to Pallab next. Now, there are essential services like utilities, power, where you are working on internet. These are all running on smart grid frameworks. And now BCP is essential for these essential services. It's super critical, no doubt. Now, in these smart grid frameworks, what sort of security measures you would be recommending so that the BCP is also secured?
Fantastic question, Rajneesh. Actually, to be very frank, we must say that we are going towards this smart grid framework. We are coming up with a new smart grid control center having transmission and distribution SCADA. But at present, actually the IT and the OT is totally segregated through a communication system, and we have multiple firewalls. And you see, there are, as far as we were discussing only about the IT part. But in a smart grid, the IT OT segregation as well as the convergence is a big discussion point. And in our architecture, we have IT and OT as well. So in the OT, again, there are two types of OT. One is the classical OT followed at the generating stations, having industrial control system and digital control system, where we have multiple vendors like Siemens, GE, and other OT vendors who does for this business continuity planning. They are external users and accessing a remote access VPN connections, and very correctly said by Sushobhan, the multi-factor authentication comes into picture. So these are the important parameters to be followed for a sustainable environment for OT and IT as well. As far as the OT being followed in the distribution stations, we have the DS monitoring system, again being monitored by Siemens, Arriva, ABB, and there are multiple OEMs, the OT OEMs in the power utility. And we have the DS RTU, we have the DS RMUs, we have the metering infrastructure. That is the most important infrastructure, that is the smart metering infrastructure. And we have the MDAS at present, and we are going for the MDMS. So this IT-OT convergence part, the most important aspect to have is an unified SOC. An unified SOC would have both the IT and OT traffic should be properly correlated through security incident and event management tool like Splunk, maybe QRadar, maybe HP Arcsine. There are multiple, and they should categorize the protocols like IC104, DNP3, the OT protocols, not only the IT protocols. So that is a very big challenge for a power utility. This is a very big challenge for a power utility to maintain this IT-OT convergence and to maintain a sustainable BCP. So it's a very big challenge as far as the stringent guidelines from the Ministry of Power, the SARTIN, the NCI-IPC. We are coming up with the CII, the Critical Infrastructure Information. Yes, we have to submit to the Ministry of Power. We have to give our cyber crisis management plan, and also every 2 years we have to undergo an IT-OT security audit. So these are the entities of paramount importance to be carried out to maintain a sustainable BCP as for the smart grid framework.
Thank you. That's a very insightful information, and I'm sure this would help us even formulating some of the best practices required. Anuj, I'll come to you, especially with your infrastructure management expertise. Things like the security of the facilities, access control, information access policies, these are also part of BCPs. How would you recommend that organizations go for each of these things in this BCP plan, overall BCP plan, they are components of infrastructure management, really facilities management and those things. How would they go in their BCP plan for this?
Cyber security and business continuity, right? They are both codependent and inseparable. Right. So earlier, when we used to talk about, say, BCP, it was limited to natural disasters, man-made disasters, or utility failures, or some sort of some sabotage being happening to a facility, or things like that. Nowadays, there are things which contribute and should be included in our BCP. Is data breach, cyber attacks, DDoS attacks, cross-site scripting, security misconfigurations should also be treated as BCP, should be part of BCP. Vulnerability management should be part of a BCP thing. And if there is something which is called sensitive data exposure, if that has happened, right, to contain the exposure of the data that has been leaked, we should invoke a BCP, right? For example, we hear many times that people, here's a call center running in India, and people leaked out some data or something like that of citizens of the US, or even in India, right, where credit card data is stolen or something like that happens. So all these things should be part of the BCP, right? It should not be only related to when only a natural disaster that has occurred, right? And more often than not, facility management is also one thing where, if the BCP should say, if the plan, so for example, how we made our plan is whether our facility is approachable or not, whether we can get into the facility, then do this. If we cannot get into the facility, do this. If we can get into the facility after 3 days, these are the things which we need to do. If we cannot get into the facility next 1 day, these are the critical business operation that needs to be taken care of immediately, right? And as far as the security of those are concerned, we should educate our employees, right, about the scams that may occur. So for example, in there are specialization of COVID-19 scams being coming through email blasts and things like that. So we should tell our users to not click on unsolicited emails and things like that. And more I would end by saying, we should always be prepared to take the necessary steps to get ready for such events. Don't be ready, stay ready.
Thanks, Anuj. Vikas, I'll come to you. Now, in many cases, even the BCP itself is on a cloud environment. And so in these cases where the BCP is in an outsourced third-party data center and in a cloud kind of environment, what as an organization should be the additional security measures that you can look at?
That's a very interesting area to discuss. Why? Because cloud comes with a mixed feeling. There are some organizations which are very conservative, and they will think that cloud is insecure or less secure. So they think it is completely unsafe to go to the cloud, and they have a fortress mentality. So you can take very progressive companies like Hindustan Lever, Unilever, many others working in India, and I'm talking about my experience with British Telecom, many other clients that we face. They would take very baby steps towards cloud because their peers are already doing it, but they don't want to do it. So that's the fortress mentality that we witness and see around. At the same time, there are other companies who are very progressive, and I see that a lot in smaller customers, smaller enterprises who do not want to maintain IT as their core strength. They would rather focus on their product and marketing and manufacturing and outsource most bits of their IT. And they definitely don't want to have any kind of data center in-house, so they will outsource everything to something like AWS or Azure. And outsourcing something to a company like Amazon or a Microsoft, they think it's a very safe thing to do, and they will rest assured. So, but I think the world is very different out there. Neither should we be very secure or insecure. We have to do the cost benefit analysis when we move to the cloud. Whatever is in need of the hour and whatever processes, operations we can outsource to the cloud should be done, because at the end of the day they are scalable, and we can save a lot of cost, particularly in these corona times. Cloud, like I said, is a very interesting thing. At the same time, we need to integrate and have a common understanding. I think someone pointed out earlier that user training and all these things are very important. So whether we do cloud or whether we do not do cloud, if a user is unaware, he will misunderstand or misinterpret and take shortcuts, and all your security will go for a toss. For example, at BT, in the last month of April, in a single week in the country of Spain, we sold 40,000 VPN connections. That was unheard of. Nowhere have we sold 40,000 VPN connections in any single country in a single week. Why is this happening? Because of the small businesses wanting remote working. And but when you allow your employees to do remote work, then you have to user train them. They have to understand what is VPN tunneling, how should they log in, where all they should not use public internet, they should use secure internet, and various other things that come along with it. So cloud, therefore, is a very interesting subject. That's all I can say. And at the same time, we should also have integrity or cohesiveness in different departments. For example, if you talk about the same breach coming in from an operations perspective, he will say, oh, there's a disaster. If you talk to an information security expert, he might think, oh, it is a denial of service. If you go to a IT guy, infrastructure guy, he may think, oh, it is some SLA we have missed. So these different interpretations will again, make the organization respond in a very different way. And but if these three individuals are part of the, now a lot of organizations, we are promoting and moving them towards having some kind of platform, which is commonly known in industry as GRC, in governance, risk, compliance platforms, and they can have many other names. But there is a team coming from different streams, different verticals, different buckets, and they together drive a business continuity plan or the cloud journey of an organization. Such misinterpretations will not happen, and we will be secure.
Thank you. I'll just put up one question to Pallab. You have touched upon that open system framework for BCP. So just would like very briefly a little bit on what is IEEE's point of view regarding open system frameworks for BCP.
First, we need to know the history of this IPsec protocol that is being used for the VPN. You see, SSL is okay. It has been working at the 4th to 7th layer of this TCP/IP model, but the IPsec used to work in the network layer, and it has been brought into the industry by IETF, that is Internet Engineering Task Force. And later on, with the help of this open data plane and unified modeling language, IEEE has proved that this open system protocol using this ODP and UML is good enough, and with the handshaking with IETF has brought this open system framework. And using this open system framework, people have come out with this, OEM has come out with Cisco AnyConnect. Sophos has come up with SSL Connect, or Checkpoint, or all the firewalls, Palo Alto, everybody is using this open system framework and has made their proprietary protocols. So one request I would like to mention for the startups, for the new engineers of the era, to try out the open system protocol, and maybe they can bring more sustainable, more acceptable, more cost-effective. Cost is an important part, cost-effective products as far as work-from-home scenarios are concerned. And again, as Vikas said, that this cloud platform, it's a deep sea for discussion point, because whether we go for cloud or not. But now this Amazon Workspace and many cloud environment has come up friendly, but still I would request the young researchers as well as the startups to explore this open system framework given by IETF and IEEE and come out with some cost-effective, sustainable products framework so that this BCP could be maintained in a cost-effective manner as well.
Thank you. We have just run out of time. Any panelist would like to make any comment? Okay, in that case, I thank all the panelists once again. And as I mentioned, we will share the link of the recorded discussion with all of you. And thanks once again for a very insightful discussion. And not only in the video, even in our CXO TV website, we will put up and highlight and feature the discussion points which came up today. And thanks again to all the panelists, and have a wonderful time. Please take care and stay safe.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.